The Australian War Memorial, the soul of a nation, that's what's housed within its stone and brass walls.
In November 2018, Scott Morrison announced the Australian War Memorial in Canberra would receive $500 million for a massive redevelopment, which has been widely criticised as turning a national shrine into a theme park.
There will be paintings and dioramas, there'll be planes, more planes in fact.
4.5 years later, a different Prime Minister was making another major spending announcement, representing a very different view of just what constitutes the soul of the Australian nation.
Support for the arts and cultures brings economic benefits, but it also brings benefits to our soul as a nation. And then they look at the Indigenous art, go through the memorial, look at everything that's here.
While both spending announcements are on a similar scale, about $500 million, Anthony Albanese was making a much-needed investment in the nation's cultural heritage.
$535 million in the 9 national collecting institutions over 4 years.
These institutions include the ones that keep the nation's memories, the libraries, archives and museums, and include the galleries that celebrate and give us access to great artworks from Australia and abroad. Some of the buildings housing these crucial parts of our national cultural life are in such a bad state of repair that their collections have been under threat. Others face a crisis over storage facilities that are disappearing, are inappropriate or are hugely inadequate. Funding cuts over decades, but particularly in the last 10 years, have seen them closing their doors and laying off staff.
The issues that we have with this building are really all about protecting that $1.1 billion asset so it's available for future generations. Every window in this building now leaks. Our drains and gutters leak.
I can't find where it's coming from.
Even before a massive hailstorm in 2020 destroyed its roof, the National Library of Australia, housed in a 60-year-old building beside Lake Burley Griffin, was facing major structural problems.
There's always surprises. 60-odd years ago, there were many things that probably weren't recorded in drawings. There are a lot of latent issues around asbestos.
Similar structural problems hitting the National Gallery a short distance away have received national attention, with pictures revealing massive water leaks and a gallery full of buckets to catch them. The contrast between the buckets of money poured into the Australian War Memorial and the buckets of water pouring into the National Gallery is particularly stark for one of Australia's most famous living artists, and also our official war artist in Afghanistan.
I have great friends who I met in Afghanistan who are really struggling for support in the community and for funding to do the things that mean they can mend and come back into civilian life, and yet we're spending $500 million on a museum in Canberra, which is a really important thing, and it means a lot to me. That place of memorialisation is crucial. But the War Memorial sits across the lake from the National Gallery, and there can't be more of a vivid juxtaposition of one museum expanding to become the world's biggest museum about war and memorialisation. And across the lake, this museum of art that is literally crumbling. And I think it says a lot about the priorities of our governments, and I think they're wrong.
The structural problems faced by our cultural institutions are not the only ones that yesterday's funding announcement are seeking to address.
We have a severe storage problem. By mid-2025, we will have a deficit of 18 linear kilometres of storage. Our physical collection grows by 2 kilometres every year, so we will continue to need new storage for the collection into the future.
There are also big storage problems at the National Museum of Australia, and its storage problems are not just about space. In a letter written in December last year and obtained by 7:30 under FOI laws, the museum's chair Ben Maguire told Arts Minister Tony Burke,
"The museum's storage of the National Historical Collection is in a parlous state. One of the storage areas, located next door to a concrete batching plant, now has latent conditions that make it unsafe for staff to work there without remediation."
The museum was forced to sell its purpose-built storage in the late 1990s under the then Howard government's massive asset sales program. At the storage area next to the cement works, concrete dust is such an issue, staff must wear protective clothing and breathing apparatus to enter it. Yesterday's new funding will allow the museum to fix the storage problems, but also a crisis over its recurrent costs, a problem for all the institutions. The museum's funding had been set to slump from more than $50 million this financial year to under $40 million next year. Having escaped such near-death experiences, the national cultural institutions have been breathing a sigh of relief, but they also know this significant injection of funds is only helping them catch up.
The funding bids that are in for this budget are about maintaining all of our work. They're not about making it better. So they're not about big bang solutions, reaching more people, doing more, but they're enough for us definitely to keep the lights on.
Our population in Australia has grown 20% since 2007, but cultural funding has only grown by 10%. And that means that we're trying to service a bigger and more diverse population with different expectations than they did have in terms of digitisation, in terms of repatriation, and in terms of access right across the country. And these cultural institutions are trying to do all of those things with much less.
Perhaps the most important balance to be restored this week is not the financial one, but the balance of priorities in our national memory.
Hero worshipping veterans, which I do. I have met some lifelong friends from my interactions with them in Afghanistan and after Afghanistan. But to put them on a pedestal is an easy way for a government to win votes, I think. Maybe blue poles is a bit harder to win votes for. We all need to be treated the same. Sports people, artists, veterans, we all need some level playing field so that we can go forward and be the best that we can be. And at the moment, previously, historically, it's been tilting away from storytelling, away from telling us who we are, examining who we are to become better in the future. And I think there's nothing more profoundly important.